Welcome to ¿Qué pasa? HSIs, a podcast dedicated to everything Hispanic serving institutions. I'm your host, Dr. Gina Ann Garcia, bringing you the news on what's happening in HSIs. Join us as we explore the history and evolution of HSIs, culturally relevant and liberatory practices, current and emerging research with HSIs, and the policies that shape servingness.
Saludos HSI familia, and welcome back to ¿Qué pasa? HSIs. On today's show, we are going to talk about transforming HSIs in practice, in community with other campuses, and informed by research. In fall 2023, I received a small grant from the Student Experience Research Network to resources for policy and practice audiences. The purpose of the project was to foster collaborative research practice policy partnerships, create capacity for HSIs to pursue additional funding streams and opportunities beyond those offered by the federal government, and advocate for state and federal support to continue developing educational structures that shape student experiences and promote equitable educational outcomes for Latina students. The project included participatory action research, which is a liberatory research method that allows the participants to name their concerns in practice, explore their identified problems, and develop action-based solutions to address their pressing concerns. I called on my friends, las presidentas más famosas in the California Community College system, Dr. Cynthia Olivo and Dr. Angelica Garcia, to apply for and implement this grant with me. When the grant was funded, we were given precisely 1 year to transform their campuses, Fullerton College and Santa Rosa Junior College. Of course, we know that transformation takes longer than a year, but we were up for the challenge and launched the prime lever for creating change on campus, which we called transformation teams. Both presidentas compiled teams that included a mix of 15 educators across campus, including classified professionals, faculty, administrators, and students on their campus. They also appointed team leads who became my primary contacts and co-conspirators throughout the year-long project. I also called on my friend, Dr. Wilder Pilar at Education Trust, to help us think about how we could translate the work we were doing into policy-relevant recommendations. For the first 6 months of the project, we focused on learning, or what was formally proposed as translating HSI research to practice. Each month, team members were assigned homework, including chapters to read from my book, Transforming HSIs for Equity and Justice, and pages to complete in the Transforming HSIs for Equity and Justice, a practitioner's workbook. We also hosted 2-hour monthly meetings to discuss the homework with a focus on elevating team members' understanding of HSIs, servingness, and the educational structures, policies, procedures, and practices that would support their focus on becoming intentional HSIs. We talked about the campus mission, HSI identity, strategic purpose, curriculum, and governance structures. We also learned about inequities in outcomes and experiences of Latina students and explored various approaches to servingness. With some members of the team having little to no knowledge of HSIs or servingness when we started, the goal was to raise awareness and understanding while also building consciousness of the gaps in servingness on their campuses. In the third month, we started to develop problems in practice, which were based on the lived experiences of team members. We went through a series of exercises to help each team conceptualize the biggest issues they saw that hindered their ability to serve Latina students and the barriers to advancing servingness. Each team member then joined a subcommittee based on 5 identified problems in practice. In the 5th month of the project, the teams were directed to collect data to further elucidate their identified problems with guidance from my team of researchers at UC Berkeley, who helped the teams explore various forms of data available to them, including secondary data. After collecting data, the teams were asked to create action-based solutions. They were also encouraged to present their findings to the campus community to help spread the word of their work and their progress. We concluded the official grant-funded project in November 2024 and submitted our final grant report. Pero la lucha sigue. On today's show, we are going to talk about the transformation team process and the results from each campus. Our guests co-led the transformation teams at each campus and have extensive knowledge on the process, the challenges faced, and the wins experienced over the year. Our guests include Dr. Robert Bobby Holcomb, who serves as Vice President of Academic Affairs / Assistant Superintendent at Santa Rosa Junior College, overseeing all instructional programs, learning support areas, and educational initiatives. Previously, Dr. Holcomb worked as an instructional dean, Hispanic Serving Institution director, and tenured professor, teaching coursework in English as a second language over a 9-year span at Rio Hondo College. Dr. Holcomb holds a PhD in educational studies from Claremont Graduate University, a master's degree in teaching English to speakers of other languages, and a bachelor's degree in Spanish from the University of Southern California. I would say go Trojans, but go Bruins. He is joined by Dr. Julio Flores, who has over 9 years of experience in community college counseling programs and currently serves as Dean of Counseling and Support Services at Santa Rosa Junior College. Prior to SRJC, he was a tenured faculty member in the counseling department at Rio Hondo College. He has also served as an adjunct faculty member teaching graduate students in educational counseling programs at USC, University of Laverne, and CSU Dominguez Hills. Dr. Flores adheres to a Gestalt counseling approach. At the core of Gestalt therapy is the holistic view that people are intricately linked to and influenced by their environment, and that all people strive toward growth and balance. Last but certainly not least, we have Doctora Flor Huerta, who is the Dean of Counseling and Student Development at Fullerton College. She has worked at Fullerton College for over 25 years in various roles, including classified staff, tenured faculty, and management. As a first-generation California Community College transfer, she has dedicated her professional career to advancing initiatives to foster equitable practices, enact servingness to innovate, and design support systems for student success. Dr. Huerta has a bachelor's degree in sociology, a master's degree in counseling with an emphasis in career development, and a doctoral degree in educational leadership in higher education. I'm excited to be in conversation with my friends, my co-conspirators, and my co-organizers in the HSI movement. Welcome, y'all.
All right.
Yeah, let's go. So welcome to Get Boss HSIs, y'all, where we talk about all things HSIs. But as you know from listening to the podcast, we always start by talking first about you and what brought you to HSI work. So I'm going to go ahead and bring Bobby to the microphone first. Tell us about your servingness journey.
Absolutely. Well, thanks so much, Gina. It's such a privilege to be here with you and with our compañeros here with Julio and Flor. Sure, I'm happy to share about my background. I am a first-generation college graduate. Grew up in a bilingual, bicultural household. My mother's from northern Mexico, Monterrey, Nuevo León, in fact, and my father's from southern Ohio. And so that was really the context in which I've experienced the world, just navigating different environments with a dual cultural identity. I grew up in Napa, and there was and there still is a very present Mexican and Latinx community there. Um, after that, I attended the University of Southern California, USC, as an undergraduate. It was not an HSI at the time. In fact, it's still not an HSI. But I did get to hang out at El Centro Chicano, which is a cultural student success hub. It's still there, but I think now it's called La Casa, is what I'm told. But my real journey with the HSI world began in the year 2000 when I accepted a tenure track faculty position at Rio Hondo College on the east side of Los Angeles. Rio Hondo has a student population of about maybe 70 or 80% Latinx, maybe even a little higher. And I eventually went on to serve as HSI director in 2010, then overseeing a separate grant in 2015 before relocating to Northern California in 2016 to join the team here at Santa Rosa Junior College. And I would just say that I love everything about HSIs. I love the presence, the advocacy, the community, la cultura, all the possibilities that they convey. And I really carry the HSI lens into everything I do these days as a college vice president under the leadership of our superintendent president, Dr. Angelica Garcia, who is, of course, the first first Latina president in the history of Santa Rosa Junior College. And so that's how my HSI journey began and continues to unfold.
I love it. You didn't say you love La Reina de HSIs. That's me. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh.
I'm just kidding. Julio, let's bring you into the microphone. Tell us about your servingness journey.
So thank you, Gina, for having me on the podcast. My servingness journey really started way before I was even a thought or idea. So the journey really began with the migration of my parents who fled their home country of Nicaragua, a country of communistic ideologies. So fleeing their then home in search of like better opportunities is where my journey began. So I'm really grateful to mi mami, mi papi, because my experiences and journey would have looked much differently had they made the decision to stay in a war-torn country. But given the context of our current presidential administration, they basically left the war-torn country for a race war-torn country, and that really brings me to the mocoso that I like to talk about when I talk about my HSI servingness. I had this photo hung up on my office wall to remind me that as I ascend to leadership positions, that it was the trials and tribulations of this mocoso that I really get to engage in this work. I'm a proud Nicaraguan American, born and raised in the southeast cities of LA, including Southgate and Huntington Park. And much like Bobby, my journey continued at Rio Hondo College, a two-year community college in Whittier, where I began to experience the construct of servingness. Now, if you speak to any student or any faculty member at Rio Hondo College, if you ask them to describe the culture, they'll always use the same word, which is family or familia, to describe it. So really embracing this lived experience, which Eugenia, our term servingness, Rio Hondo College is a place that, even though as a student and later as a tenured faculty member, I never really heard the term HSI because the institution itself was committed to serving its student population, which was predominantly Latine. I do want to mention that not all families are perfect, though, and they do have their set of issues, but it was a familia nonetheless. So my time at Rio Hondo College as a student is also the continuation of my servingness as I began to ask myself questions like, well, why are certain racial and ethnic students sitting with their peers, their same racial ethnic peers in the quad, or why are more X students doing better than Y students? So these curiosities are what led me to my graduate journey at the USC Ross Year School of Education, where I began to really study and understand the pervasive and systemic racism in all of our systems. It's also where I started to hear the term minority serving institution after reading Fostering Success and Ethnic and Racial Minorities STEM, the Role of Minority Serving Institutions, which is edited by Palmer, Maramba, and Gasman, who does a lot of work on MSIs. So this was really the catalyst for my thesis, which I titled Persistencia de Nuestros Ingenieros and Ingenieras, examining the persistence of Latinos in engineering at a minority serving community college. And then after my graduate experience, I returned to Rio Hondo College as a tenured faculty member, and shortly thereafter, I went to complete my doctoral program at Cal State Long Beach, where I studied campus racial climates and its impact on BIPOC students, which then birthed my dissertation, It's Getting Cold in Here, Perceptions of Campus Climate for Latino Males. I bring up all these projects and opportunities because without even knowing it, I've always been engaged in servingness work, and it's also the frame of reference that I approach my work now at Santa Rosa Junior College as the Dean of Counseling and Support Programs at SRJC.
Thank you. I love it. The Diaries of a Mocoso. Is that what's going to come out?
I didn't want to show it because you can't.
Yes, I love it. Aw, love it. Awesome. Let's bring Doctora Flor into the microphone. Tell us about your servingness journey.
Hola, buenas tardes. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so happy to be here with all of you and our colleagues, just having this opportunity to really share what we've been doing. You know, my journey is very similar to both Robert's and Julio's journey, and many of you that are probably listening right now. I was born in Mexicali, Baja California, una cachanilla. And my mom and dad, you know, my dad was raised in El Centro. My mom was raised in Mexicali, formerly from Culiacan. So I have Culiacan roots. But I really grew up in San Diego most of my life. I understood that I needed higher ed. It was understood for me as the oldest in my family and just being quote unquote the responsible one. And so I just kind of took that on as the oldest and really used my dad's experience. He had been one of very, very few, a handful of Mexicans back in the day in the early 70s that were able to go to UC San Diego. You know, for him in his journey, he wasn't able to finish higher ed. You know, he had kids, he got married, he was helping out his family, going up and down California as a laborer or in the farm, as a farm worker with his family. So I guess from as a child, I knew that I needed to go to college somehow, right? So in making that happen. So through my high school, that was something that was just really embedded in me. I didn't know how I was going to get there. In fact, I asked many questions. My tío used to say I was going to be a profesora because I always asked questions. I was like, pero por qué esto? And why that? And how come we don't do this? And little did I know that a lot of that, is really at the root of who I am. And even now, in where I'm at in this position of privilege, I'm still doing the same. Why is that? I don't understand. Tell me more, learning about that. So that was interesting. That's always been a part of me. So I'm a first generation. I was the first to complete college in my family, got the privilege to go away to Cal State Long Beach in my undergrad. I decided it was sociology after a few tries of taking psychology and being like, I'm getting C's and that's not okay. So I switched over to sociology and I just was more successful in those courses. It was all about trial and error. I had 2 jobs while going to college. I was that niña that just didn't want to ask for things with my parents because I knew that they were barely making it every month. So I tried to figure it out. I think as most of us try to do, right? But I knew again that I had to complete college, not only for myself, but also it was kind of the legacy that I was going to for my parents, for my dad that wasn't able to do it, right? So it was something that I know that was very important for me. In terms of that, I went into my graduate work and I guess I didn't really know that it was servingness at that point, right? I just knew I wanted a service. I wanted to be in the space of serving others and supporting students and understanding that I didn't know exactly at that moment in time, but I knew that many of our students, having been brought up in San Diego and going to Southwestern College, I'd see a lot of our students coming over from Tijuana. Just in the general area, there was a high volume of Latino students, identified as Latino, Mexican American, what have you. And so I knew that that was an area that I really wanted to focus on, and it was really embedded in my own story. And so I just pursued a master's in counseling because I said, you know what, I have to go on and I want to serve. And through my journey, my educational and professional journey, I had the privilege of meeting different folks in the California community college system that really were mentors, that really saw things in me, and I was able to get opportunities. And I'm always very grateful for those opportunities, but also very grateful for the place that I came from, and trying to harness that whenever I'm in spaces that, regardless of whether we're talking about enrollment and barriers or HSI and our servingness, that I always try to reflect as a student as to who would I have wanted to advocate for me at the time. And so I pursued a doctorate because I knew that I wanted to have that doctora in front of my name for my family and for myself, really. And I had the opportunity throughout my trajectory, as I mentioned, 25 years of my life I've worked here at this campus. And, I think it's an understatement if I say I love Fullerton College. Porque pues sí, I love Fullerton College, ¿verdad? Pero I think what's most important is I love working with our California community college students. And so understanding what HSI was, or even an MSI, that didn't come till later on in my trajectory as a professional. And so now that I'm in this position, I'm able to really utilize the information that I have and the resources to give back. And I think at the end of the day, that's what servingness is all about, really, is just making sure that we are advocating for our students in our community. And so that's kind of been my trajectory and how I've gotten here. And just again, having been in opportunities as an adjunct faculty, a full-time tenured faculty, and different spaces, being an EOPS student, running Puente programs and Title V programs. It's just, I think it's full circle for me. And my Theo was right. I was in some ways going to go into education and still keep asking those questions.
Yes, for sure. Oh, I love it. I love bringing the parents into the conversation. I mean, we have community college educators here on the podcast today, and it seems like 2 of the 3 of y'all went to community colleges. So, which, obviously that makes sense, right? That you started in the community colleges and you have this like strong commitment to being in the community colleges. I feel like Southwestern College was probably an HSI like from day one because of the location. Right? Like I assume the population is predominantly Latina just because it's right there. It's close to the border, right? Yeah. So yeah, even if it wasn't an HSI, it was an HSI. But let's talk about the term we use, Flor, which is the TIA HSIs, right? And this idea that Fullerton College has actually been an HSI for quite some time, right? Since probably the beginning, we've been using the term affectionately called the TIAs, right? The TIA HSIs, meaning those HSIs that have been around at least 25, 30 years, but also they be acting like tias sometimes, and not necessarily willing to be innovative and jump in and do new things. So I definitely use that term affectionately, but want to hear about Fullerton College. Let's set the context. Tell us about Fullerton College.
Yeah, so for sure, la tia que doesn't want to change sometimes, but we're in a new era, right? So Fullerton College is home to me. It's been home to me. It's really, like I mentioned in the beginning, it's really prepared me in many facets. I've been a classified, a faculty, and now I'm in a dean position. So I've seen it through different lenses. But what really makes this campus unique is it is the oldest and continuous operation in California. So, as a California community college system, we hold a strong history just in the state since 1913, right? So, that's in books, that's in Wikipedia, you can find that. So, it was interesting to find out through this process of the transformation team, their campus has been a designated HSI since the mid 90s. In fact, mid 90s to late 90s, it was one of the group's original HSIs. So when we learned about that, it was kind of an extra layer of being proud, but also an opportunity for us to further explore that, right? What does it mean and where are we at? And how does that impact our current identity as a campus? So knowing that, and also knowing now that as a campus, based on our population, we had technically been an Anapeasy campus as well. So learning more about our roots as a minority serving institution has been really eye-opening for not just the transformation team here at Fullerton, but our campus, because that's something that we've really used to amplify and just leverage the information to share with our whole campus wide. So we have an NPZ because of the percentage of students, but we were able to celebrate getting the grant a couple years ago. So that's been something that's we're really proud of. And also, as part of being a minority serving institution, is just really proud of really focusing on our Black student success throughout our whole campus, which in itself, we're trying to build capacity to continue to support and enact the servingness to promote radical inclusivity here, and really talk to our co-conspirators across campus and our district to really come together to serve our students. So even though we've been at the AB for a while, it's been a really privilege to just kind of learn more about, how do we currently identify, and what is our campus and our structure and our infrastructure and our documents, and what does that say about our current identity as an MSI HSI campus?
Yes, thank you for that. Bobby, tell us about Santa Rosa.
Claro que sí. Well, Santa Rosa Junior College is a single college district in Northern California. We're about 80 miles north of San Francisco. We have 5 district sites throughout Sonoma County, and we serve approximately 20,000 students annually. We have a Latinx student population of about 42%, and that has grown incrementally in recent years. We are, in cambio, not a tia, but we're kind of a baby HSI still, or at least maybe a toddler. We became an HSI in 2013, and since then, though, we've been pretty prolific, I think. We've been able to implement 4 separate grant programs since then, including one HSI STEM grant. Our region is definitely an agricultural region, also with a big hospitality industry. And so there's a beautiful Latinx community comprised of immigrant families as well as US-born familias of Mexican descent or Latinx descent, with all the cultural richness and kind of the shared traditions that we all love and we all celebrate. And so appropriately at SRJC, we have some strong advocacy and some really righteous programming to support Latinx students and their educational goals. Although we also acknowledge that as an organization, we're a work in progress, and there's definitely room to grow and improve, and that's what brought us to partnership on this project.
Yeah, I feel like y'all are at teen level.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, you're exploring who you are. We have teens, right? You have teenagers, me too, right?
I
They're
do.
exploring who they are,
Yeah.
right? Like coming into their own being, but still, still relying on the parents, right? And the family to grow. So yeah,
I would say
y'all are in there.
I would say finding our voice.
Yes, finding your voice. Yes, like teenagers, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, y'all there. Awesome. Well, thank you for that, so that we understand the context before we jump into what did we do, right? This idea, and for listeners, there's some people that are listening that they've been hearing. People have seen us posting about this. Some people listen to me and Flor in a webinar we did with Chales, right? Y'all have done presentations at conferences, so folks are interested, right? They want to know, what did we do, right? What did we spend a year doing on these transformation teams? So and what happened? Really, that's the story I want to tell, is what happened, right? After coming together and doing this like intense year-long project. So let's talk about that. Flor, tell us about your 5 focus areas that your team identified as issues to address, right? We originally called them problems of practice. And like, tell us about the data collection and like how they came to those topics over the process.
Sure. So our team, there was, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the challenges, but before that, I also want to just kind of let everyone know that, Fullerton College, while it has had various grants, HSI Title V grants throughout the years, we currently do not have a grant. So when we came together to really identify our problems in practice, right, and identify what are the areas that we want to prioritize, we know that, we are also a work in progress. We know that the higher ed, the system in itself is in transition, constant transition, right? So what we said is, okay, let's take a look at, the diversity of the team, and let's take a look at our data, our current campus data. And anecdotally, because our team was so diverse, is let's think through, and of course through the guidance of our administration, we have a wonderful president, Dr. Cynthia Olivo, that has been a true champion in helping us just really gather together and really look inward as a campus. And through our conversations with Dr. Gina and Garcia about how do we prioritize and not overwhelm ourselves in terms of trying to figure out what is it that we want to start with, right? So through these collective discussions and data analysis, we were able to identify some of the gaps and areas that we knew would make a difference. And they include the hiring and diversifying the faculty. We knew that our current data in the district really pointed to that our faculty in the classroom or in Zoom and remote, they do not look like our students. And so we needed to really hone in on that priority. The other is, it goes back to our identity as a campus. If you were to walk on our campus, and I've been here for 20 something years, and I really didn't know it was an HSI campus. I didn't really pay attention to that. I will be honest with you. I knew that I needed to serve our Latino, Black, Asian American students. I knew that there were students we needed to serve. I knew about the equity gaps, but we didn't call it that. We didn't identify it with that. So, and all our walls were, it just kind of was like vanilla, and so we knew that branding, marketing, letting folks know that we are unapologetically HSI, that this is who we are, was a priority. So marketing and branding our HSI MSI identity. The other is working across campus, and we knew we already had some fantastic things going on through our professional development and ideas, through our faculty processes, but we wanted to amplify the work and really understood that culturally relevant practices in, out of the classroom and student services and instruction is a priority. So our students feel like, hey, we're here for them, that this is an environment for them to learn, right? The other is creating the college-wide infrastructure. So nowhere in our documentation did it really point to these are our priorities. Our Latino student population makes over 60% of our population here on campus. And so it was really eye-opening for us when Dr. Will del Pilar, who also worked with us here on the transformation team, really highlighted that if we didn't have our Latino students on the campus, Fullerton College really wouldn't exist. I mean, plain and simple. So we need to serve our communities, and how are we going to look within to serve? So creating a college-wide infrastructure that really seeped into the documents, our master plan, which we'll be working on this spring semester, our program reviews, our mission statement, And then we also thought, a priority is let's cultivate solidarity. We've had many champions here on the campus that have over time have created great events. Like we have a wonderful, very, big community event for Dia de los Muertos. We have different types of initiatives throughout the year. But we knew that this isn't about just a quick race. We knew that this was something that we really valued and were committed to. And we weren't going to say, regardless of whether we have a grant or not, this is who we are as an institution. And these are the students we want to serve and we need to serve, right? So those are the priorities that we said, you know what, we're going to work on these. And from that, we were able to form subgroups for that.
Awesome. Okay. Let's hear the same from Julio. Bring you back into the microphone. Tell us about the areas y'all decided as a team that you were going to focus on.
Yeah, and I want to be transparent that when we began this work, we noticed down the road that we entered it from a deficit perspective. And so I really want to bring that up because I know there's going to be institutions listening to this podcast with similar cultures and climates. So I want you all to know that this work is not an easy task in those systems, but it is important. And add some hope and love, you can get to a place where you begin to observe the elements of servingness respective to your particular institution, and to continue to cosechar or tend to those elements, really like planting those seeds. We had a lot of unaddressed and unresolved and unrepaired racial ethnic tensions as a result of the events that transpired during and after the murder of George Floyd. And even though our transformation work began in 2023, we had subconsciously leaned into that despair. But after a retreat that we had with the group and some introspection, we realized like two things. One is that our themes had been written, or our subgroups had been written from a deficit perspective. The themes beginning with things like we lack or there's a false sense. So it wasn't until that retreat that we observed these items, which brings me to our second or subsequent realization, which is being in predominantly white spaces or predominantly white institutions that like to leverage this type of deficit language and perspectives as it relates to like our BIPOC students as a mechanism of really trying to subordinate or cause or be even more prevalent as we start to implement some of the AB 705 and 1705 policies in California. So it really makes sense why our transformation team was kind of in that space. So one of the groups or one of the themes that we talked about or leaned into as we did this work is claiming and affirming our HSI identity. So that consisted of creating an identity mark. And I say identity mark because HSI is a part of our identity, but our logo is SRJC. So it's like our overall brand, but HSI is a part of our SRJC logo. So that was initiated through feedback from multiple constituency groups, asking them like, what comes to mind when you think of SRJC and HSI? We had our inaugural HSI week, where we had robust activities and event programming in observation of HSI week, both on our Santa Rosa site and our Petaluma site. We revamped our HSI website. We created an HSI video, which is like basically having team members from the transformation team talk about what HSI means to them. And then something that's currently in progress is an HSI annual report, where we're basically going to have a yearly report that documents the activities that relate to our servingness. Another theme that we came across or had was creating a college-wide commitment to servingness that is collaborative. So we saw that obviously through our participation in this action research. Also, the establishment of our Latinx Center. We name our HSI status in our job descriptions. We name our HSI status in our press releases. So really taking full-fledged of our servingness in all of our documents. We also had a theme about establishing a college-wide infrastructure. So Bobby mentioned that we've been a fan of the Department of Education, securing 4 grants in our 10 years of being in HSI. So as it relates to infrastructure, securing our 4th HSI grant, our Transformando initiative, which is going to enable us to hire a new HSI project director. So for those of you listening and looking for a job and wanting to work at a great place like SRJC, you're on the lookout for a project director.
Dropping soon.
Another thing that we had was that IDEA work and academic excellence are inherently interwoven. So this really came up from that false notion that IDEA efforts are diluting the caliber and integrity of our curriculums. or even the misconception that if you're focused on diversity, you're not keeping the rigor of the curriculum. So like, we also heard like other tactics like, well, we're too focused on Latin students. What about supporting our non-Latin students? So really the big piece here is that if a college is saying that it's an HSI, that we're leaving out students who don't identify as Latine. But this is mainly because we're like operating from that, scarcity mindset. Like
Mm,
oh, you're not getting this, we're getting that. I even had a faculty member who shared with me, what about our white students, when I was informing them about the Latinx Center opening.
mm,
So the work on this theme has been really centered on moving from like the predominantly white institution mindset to an MSI or HSI. So I've noticed that like with our college president, she's really addressed this. And often when we have conversations about being an HSI and our servingness journey, so we're really starting to ask ourselves how to not be a PWI. And
mhm,
research even shows that diversity and inclusion initiatives can actually enhance academic rigor and student outcomes. So we're really leaning into those things. When
mhm,
students see themselves reflected in curriculum and on the campus, it affirms that their experiences matter and enhances their sense of belonging.
mm,
So we're still, this is still a work in progress, and I don't think that it was going to be solved in a year, but some of the like just the small things that we've implemented or tried to address this is our campus has an IDA task force, and so we've shared the work that we've been doing with the transformation teams. We presented transformation team progress at our professional development days, where faculty get together and they can hear about or learn about our servingness journey, but also how they can participate in the transformation teams. And then our final one being cultivating solidarity within the Latinx community and BIPOC groups. So I mentioned earlier about some of the events that happened after George Floyd affinity groups on campus called CREDGE, which allows that space to talk about these issues and how we can get together to as BIPOC groups to ensure that we are serving all of our students. We also established which is basically a organization or a group of our different learning communities. So we have Emoja, APAS, Puente, and we partner with the Campaign for College Opportunity to review the state of higher education reports for the different racial and ethnic groups in California, and really have some thorough conversations about how do we work together to ensure that we're supporting all of our students. Because as I mentioned before, there's going to be that language that tries to put us against each other, and so we're really trying to cultivate the solidarity, which I think is going to be even more important as we see this administration roll out different initiatives.
mhm. Yes, 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 absolutely. I do want to take responsibility for the deficit framing. I'm going to take responsibility for that. You know why? Because as the researcher on the team, right, I brought to us like we have to identify problems in practice, right?
Right.
And that's a term that's used. Some of y'all went through EDD programs. I know we used it in our EDD program at Pitt, right? Like you have to identify a problem in practice. What
Hmm.
do you see in practice that you can address, right? So I'm going to take responsibility for that, Julio, because I think that's why they were originally framed as problems. But I do want to acknowledge that, like, yeah, we had a retreat right in the summer, and I was there with y'all right at SRJC, and Flor and her team zoomed in from Fullerton, and we all were like, well, how come their themes are like not posed as right? It was very apparent to us that the Fullerton College team had rebranded their problems in practice, right? And they had made them topics or themes or whatever we're going to call them, right? But it was interesting to be in that room because we all were like, why are y'all's framed so negatively? But I'm taking responsibility for it. All right. So it was me for sure, making us look critically at what was going on. So, but y'all definitely have flipped it, right? And like now is like, how are we going to address this, right? So I would love to hear if you have to name what's your greatest accomplishment. What are you most proud of? Because this is 1 year, and y'all just named a bunch of stuff that has gone on already, and you're barely touching the tip of it, right? Stuff that went on in a year. So what would you say your greatest accomplishment in this process over the year that the team accomplished, Flor?
Well, I just wanted to really quickly go back to what you were mentioning about the problem practice in general. And we have different folks, right? All our colleagues are listening to this, and I think there's something to be said, Dr. Garcia, about bringing two institutions together to really work collaboratively. I mean, we met once a month, and we just really
Yes.
generated that community, ¿verdad? And
Yeah.
and just
Mhm.
really helped us kind of like figure things out, just like if we were in graduate school or, amigos, right? And figure things out. Like it's not perfect. It's not meant to be perfect. And some of the things that we were going through at Fullerton College were very similar also to Santa Rosa. So we were able to use that and to support each other. But we also acknowledged that there was many differences, right? And here at Fullerton, having been at TIA for a while, we were hungry for this. And we didn't know this until we got the group together. And
Mhm.
so that really spoke to our accomplishments, but it really spoke to when we looked at the problems in practice, we're like, okay, this is our time. We've been looking at these problems for years, right? We got to get in the room in these spaces and really look at the nitty gritty. And our teams are very diverse and had different experiences. I know we'll talk a little bit about that, but I think it's important to just kind of think about like part of our accomplishments was really building this community as a group and,
Mhm.
and leaning into each other for support, I'd say. And I would say that
Mhm.
to anybody out there is work with each other and to kind of gather that the best practices and learn from each other. Embracing, I know Julio spoke to this, but embracing our MSI HSI identity was really at the forefront of our prioritizing, and that was accomplished through having opportunities to present. I mean, we did our due diligence. We got into different spaces around the campus with all our stakeholders, in addition to opportunities outside of our campus to present, as you mentioned, Dr. Garcia at Chales, also at the DIA Institute, and in our district, because we do come from a 3 campus district. So folks were like, ¿qué están haciendo at Fullerton? What are they doing at Fullerton College, right?
Mhm.
I hear about
Mhm.
HSI Transformation Team. I hear, Dr. Flor Huerta is doing something, right? But it was really interesting because we really got an opportunity as part of our accomplishment. Is now we're part of the district NOCCCD Chancellor's Latinx Coalition Advisory, and
Mm.
we also have a seat at the Equal Employment Opportunity Advisory Committee for our district. So that really was like full circle for us when we spoke about the importance of increasing the hiring of that look like our students, right? And so part of that was shared through presentations and really helping to educate folks about the history of Fullerton. But also, it was an opportunity for us to really be vulnerable and transparent and say, hey, we don't have it all figured out. We represent the Lord. We represent all of us, and we know there's a lot of great things that have already been accomplished. So what can we add to our tool belt? What do we still need to work on as an institution? So the team focused on those pieces, and part of it, the accomplishment was getting our HSI identity on our website and every piece of our hiring documentation, in our emails, right, in our signature lines, and coming together for HSI annual event. And also making sure we had the opportunity to open up spaces this fall semester. We have our Puente Center that was also highlighted as part of our HSI, work that we've been doing as a campus. We also honed in and worked more with our folks in professional development. We have our race conscious certificate. And as the Dean of Counseling, I just made it and make sure it was intentional. Our faculty were really interested, and we soft launched the first group to have a division group go through the race conscious certificate as a faculty entity. So that was really, something that we were very proud of as an institution. We needed to model what we were out there, really just promoting, right? And then getting student voices in and capturing every event we've had that's kind of been very intentional about our HSI identity has really had an opportunity to gather information from students, to gather their thoughts and their needs. We had, as part of our events this past semester in the fall, is our graduation completion. So we were really intentional about also gathering information and data from students and getting them to get more information about completion and getting degrees, right? So part of that, but also the bigger accomplishments, as I would say, is just being out in the community and being offered opportunities. We are just starting to be part of the Excelencia in Education Institute. So that was an opportunity that our group is a part of, and that captures and goes back to our priority with looking at our infrastructure. right? And really, ideally, we'd love to have the seal of excelencia, but this is also an opportunity for us to look inward, and we'll be using that framework along with the servingness framework with our master plan this spring semester. So I would say that in the year, I think we've done a great detail of moving, sometimes shaking, folks. One of the big things that came about were folks from our different affinity programs asking, well, there's a big focus on our APITA and APZ communities, our Latina communities, and our Black African American student community. How are we supporting that? So we were very intentional in formulating luncheons to talk about our solidarity as a campus, but now it's actually been part of the conversations at the district level. So it was really, I think that when we sum up our accomplishments here at Fullerton College, it was about just gaining momentum, Dr. Garcia, and really using that framework to increase with student success or academic outcomes, but also really focus on what does it mean for us in terms of our liberatory outcomes? What does it mean
Mhm.
for our students, right? And that was really a piece that I think most of us, we were in here with you, transformation team, that was something that was like an aha moment for us. So like, wow, we haven't really thought about that as an institution.
Mhm.
So we're using that framework, and now many of us will be part of as a resource to formulating that master plan for our campus.
Mhm. Wow, I'm sitting here. I was a part of this process and I'm like, wow, right? Like y'all did a lot. And I know SRJC, we're gonna hear y'all's accomplishments too, but like so much, right? And like you said, you just kind of got the ball rolling, right? And there was this aim in the grant. This is like, you write the grant and you envision what it could look like. And then when it actually happens, I'm like, whoa, like what I wrote came to life, right? And one of them was preparing the campuses to be in contact with other organizations that would help them. Like you mentioned Excellencia, right? Like Seal of Excellencia, right? And being in contact with Excellencia in education, right? Like that was part of it, right? That it was like, yes, we're not going to accomplish everything in 1 year, but how do we start to branch out and get the movement go? The HSI movement. This is the HSI movement,
Yes.
right? This is us getting people together and informing people and addressing the like, hey, what about this, right? Because people did bring that up. But yeah, so it's just so beautiful to hear. So let's hear SRJC. What are your biggest accomplishments? What are you most proud of?
Honestly, as I thought back about this question, and even though the year of the research project itself, I know I came in later into the research project, uh, and it was so difficult because even as you heard, like all the things that we were able to accomplish in a year, which when we started talking about like, are we going to be able to do this type of work in 1 year? We did it. We moved the needle
Mm-hmm.
for sure.
Mhm.
What I will say is that I feel like the work that we did was so grounded that even after the end of the research project, we wanted to continue doing the transformation work. And
Mm-hmm.
so the transformation team really acknowledged that there was something real in what we were trying to do, that there was a level of interest and that the engagement was there and what we were trying to do. So we were like, let's take it to the next level. So one example would be that in collaboration with Fullerton College, we submitted an IEPI grant with the chancellor's office and we were accepted. So as you can tell, this type of work is going to continue to be manifest itself in other spaces. And for those of you that don't know, the EPI grant is basically creating these like technical assistant teams, which are called partner resource teams, that are essentially made available to institutions that are requesting that type of assistance. So we want to become an HSI. We want to hear about how y'all were able to do this amount of work in this short. So I would say that really the greatest accomplishment is the momentum that we built from the work that we did.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. It is. It's like getting the ball rolling is part of it, right? Just getting going. But I love to hear that you got to, again, that was one of the goals of the grants that like setting you all up for the ability to apply for other opportunities, right? Other funding. And anybody listening that's a funder, feel free to reach out. We got many projects we could think through, right? But this worked, right? This is evidence that like these grant projects work. Particularly, this would be in the category of research practice partnership, right? That like the research and the practice are working collaboratively, right? move the campus, which is really, really cool. All right. So Bobby, let's bring you back to the mic. We're hearing about all these like great accomplishments and how much progress y'all have made. And there's lots of joy in this process, but also we know that there were some challenges along the way, right? And I always like to bring that in because I don't want people listening to think that like, well, why is it so hard on my campus, right? Why is it working so well on these other campuses? So tell us, Bobby, about some of the challenges y'all hit along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, the challenges we faced were really opportunities to grow as a team and an organization. So, I'll also kind of frame it that way. But we did face some challenges throughout the process. Some were logistical. For example, there was a major campus event that was scheduled and it conflicted with one of our monthly team meetings. And that kind of set us back a month. There was some concern around that and maybe a little bit of finger pointing or kind of some consternation around that. There was also kind of a process for getting to know one another and just kind of building trust in general, maybe overcoming some preconceived notions about one another's
Mhm.
commitment to the work or abilities to kind of follow through in challenging spaces. Like, when it comes down to it, are you really going to be down? Are you really going to advocate? How deep is your commitment to our community? So kind of breaking through some of those preconceived notions. And then on another real practical level, the transformation team members are also individuals with just very full plates and workloads. So even just freeing up the space to keep up with the assigned readings, as much as we love them and we love all of your work, Gina, but keeping up with assigned readings, completing workbook pages, and being of our normal roles. But it was all worth it, and it kind of came together. And I think we broke through that and persevered through it, and we're in a better place as a team and as a community at SRJC now because of going through that kind of that storming and norming, and now we're starting to perform.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think one thing I would say too about even like the readings, right? And that even me, as I came to it was like, what if this totally bombs, right? Like people don't want to read it. You bring up people's busy lives, right? Like who wants to read a book? Like this isn't a class, right? They're not getting credit for it. They're not getting paid to be here. But I think one thing that I definitely want to make sure we elevate before we finish this episode is the presidents, right? That were committed, right?
Hmm.
To have high level commitment from your presidents, right? Both of y'all had these like presidents who were like backing these teams, right? Who helped put together the teams, right? And made sure that everybody on the team knew like this is important, right? Without saying you should do the homework, is it was sort of looming, right? Which I think I want to make sure we stress that, right? That to have high level commitment from your presidents actually matters a lot in this work. So
For
I don't
sure,
want
for
to,
sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
don't want to go by without saying that.
Mm-hmm.
So Flor, what about you? Any challenges y'all hit along the way, or was smooth sailing?
Oh, totally. No, we're in higher ed, so it's expected, right? But as Robert mentioned, I think that the challenges were really opportunities for us to grow and to some lessons that we learned from it. I think one of the biggest thing is when we first got together, because we did go through the shared governance, which I think was a great way of forming the team. That we had diversity, and we didn't just have diversity in the employee categories. We had students, we had classified, faculty in both instruction and student services, managers, but also we had the diversity of folks that had been at Fullerton. There was a couple of us that had been here 25, 30 years. And then there was a few that had been at the campus 2 to 3 years. So different perspectives really lend to opportunities for us to really look at the different layers and learn from each other. And from the get-go, we said, and I don't know if you remember this, Dr. Garcia, but we said, look, let's try to foster this space where we're transparent, we're honest. This is not a space it's a brave space. It's a space that we all want to learn from each other. And we don't know what we're getting ourselves into, but we know that we all care about our students. At the end of the day, we have that common value. So our challenges were very similar to Santa Rosa in terms of just kind of getting started, going away with those preconceived notions and really helping to identify the problems. We were kind of over here like in the sky, like, oh my gosh, we have so many, we're overwhelmed. How do we put it into a paper? How do we kind of put it into practice, right? And when you said research to practice, I remember us all looking at each other like, wait a minute, we have a lot of work. We're already in our own, full-time jobs. What does this mean? One of the things I will say is for anyone out there that has not gotten the workbook, I mean, that workbook is excellent.
Yes.
It really helped to just kind of digest and really make it real. And in fact, we use some of those exercises in the manager's retreat as an activity. We've used it in other meetings to help us garner more information from folks, but also I don't know how to say it, simple. It was simple and easy reading. And
Practical.
so, yes. And so that made those challenging topics, because believe me, as I'm co-leading these meetings, I was the same. I thought, is this going to work? Did everybody do their homework? Like, what's happening, right? So I think it was easier in terms of having it through that workbook and using that information. And of course, your guidance, Dr. Garcia, is we need it and we love that. Thank you. But I think that and learning how to collect data, right? And having your resource, the students, doctoral students helping us out to kind of, think it through was really important. So again, supporting each other was a way for us to kind of face some of those challenges. But on campus is going around and talking to folks who really used our social capital on campus, really to go to folks and really cultivate that allyship, that just like, what is this HSI I'm hearing about? Well, let me tell you, and you can be part of it. And being inclusive, and in every presentation, we had a QR code. Be part of this. Be part of these conversations. Is there anything else to? In fact, it was part of our opening day. Dr. Oliva was very intentional about that. It's like, this is for the whole campus. Yes, we have this team that's leading some of these conversations, but this is part of who we are as a campus. So I think that's how we've kind of navigated. I'm not saying it's been all roses, pink and roses and everything, but we certainly are up for the challenge. We know this is hard work, puro corazón, and everything we're doing. And it's like I said, we're just kind of taking it day by day, but we know that this is what we want to do. And this is, we want to learn from each other as well.
Yes. The social capital. I love that you say that. I think that's really important in this HSI work, as I spend lots of time lots of time on different HSI campuses. Like the campuses that move tend to have leaders who have good social capital on campus, who have good relationships, who building relationships. Like that's so key. Like it's like the people, right? That's actually what my next book is about, is like the people are doing the work. Right. And so when you have good people that have good relationships and can sort of, address any of those concerns and whatnot that comes up, like that's key. Right. So I love that you use the term we use our social capital on campus.
Yeah. And if I just could quickly add is we've also been in spaces where we've had our folks that have retired. And these were like the folks that first started 50 years ago, our ethnic studies department. Got the Dia de los Muertos going, our OGs, right? That were in the trenches, that fought the fights for us to be where we're at right now on our campus, right? So acknowledging their work. I've been in meetings with our folks. They're part of now, our different affinity groups. They come back as retirees. And it's so important for us to acknowledge that we wouldn't be where we're at and having these conversations if it wasn't for them, it was tougher back then. We were a very conservative campus. We had different type of leadership. And so acknowledging that, and what do they say? We're standing on the shoulders of other folks. I think that is very key to say this is not something new we came up with, right? Here at Fullerton. We acknowledge and we want to continue the great work that you've all made.
Yes, absolutely. 100%. Retweet, reshare, whatever we call it, LinkedIn. What do you call a LinkedIn reshare? Reshare, huh? Awesome. Well, this has been such a just fruitful conversation. Thank you all for joining me today. We're already at the top of the hour, but you can't get out of the podcast without answering the final question. You all know what the final question is. So I'll bring Julio back in to answer the final question. ¿Qué pasa, HSIs?
So I'm currently in my Benito Antonio Martinez Ocasio era, famously known as Bad Bunny. So most of my references right now are from his Debí Tirar Más Fotos album. So primero,
Yes.
first, Boricua poet Jacobo Morales, who has some spoken word made infamous in Bad Bunny's Baile Inolvidable. Morales shares a quote saying, Mientras uno está vivo, uno debe amar lo más que pueda, which roughly translates to, while we're alive, we should love as much as we can. So I mentioned hope and love earlier in the conversation when doing this work because it's really the antithesis to that hate propaganda. And we've seen a lot of this hate manifest in initiatives of this presidential administration. So do this work with love, do this work with hope. Segundo, don't wait. So Benito's album also reminds us to debí tirar más fotos, or I should have taken more photos. Not only is like the album, like I think a major act of resistance, but it's also a warning to do the things that we often put off for another day or aren't able to do before it's too late. Take those photos now. Do the work now. Colonialism and white spaces started the day colonists stepped foot on the Americas. We've got decades of deconstructing and reconstructing the spaces and systems that we've been historically left out of. So for those of you listening that find themselves in the mindsets of like, I should have done this work yesterday or I'll do this work tomorrow. Mi gente, este trabajo comienza hoy. Take those photos, take these practices that fit with your campus culture and apply them today, hoy. Pero sobre todo, háganlo con amor, do it all with love. Y papi, mami, claro, you got to do it with a poquito de sazón. So you got to add, when you love, hope, but a little bit of sazón when we do this type of work. Estamos para las cosas que valgan la pena, and we need to do the things that matter the most.
I love it. Thanks for bringing Bad Bunny in. Bad Bunny, I always say, is servingness. Totally. And you just gave us
Cool.
a good, yes, you just gave us exactly a good breakdown of what I mean when I say that. Awesome. Bobby, ¿qué pasa, HSIs?
¿Qué pasa, HSIs? Well, eso es lo que pasa. I would say we have a rich and powerful history of resistance and resiliency as a community, of advocacy. And, we draw from the strength of our ancestors who fought and sacrificed, sometimes for their survival, other times for fair treatment, so that future generations would be safer and freer to pursue their life ambitions. We pull from creative outlets in the arts, like Julio just mentioned, music, literature, pop culture, underground scenes, and we come together to express ourselves and to mobilize and energize and keep going. And because of all that, we will always rise above the forces that are designed to keep us down. Así es que that's what's up. That's what ¿Qué pasa, HSI?
Yes. Flor, final question. ¿Qué pasa, HSIs?
Well, mine's very simple. Somos gente con mucho corazón, and we don't have to wait for the perfect conditions to be in place to transform lives. Ahora, mañana, podemos. Y ya estamos. So let's go back to our campuses and, just make dreams come true for our students and continue the great work we're already doing.
So thank you all for being here with me today on ¿Qué pasa, HSIs?
Thank you, Gina.
Thank you.